Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me today. And yes, today is Maundy, Thursday. Tomorrow is Good Friday. And then we will have Easter this Sunday. I can't believe we're already here. This year has gone so fast. Well, I'm wearing my pink, but actually this is a true magenta, isn't it? Easter hat. And for you who have been with me from the very beginning, it was 2 years ago that we started having the tea talks. And it was this very week, the Easter week. And to my great surprise, one of my sons, Nathaniel, sent me this hat as an Easter. Actually, it was a birthday gift that came just in time for Easter. And so I wore it, if not on the first, the second tea talk. I don't think you could get a hat any bigger. It's absolutely stupendous. Well, I thought magenta is the color of 2023. It's Eastertide. I'm going to wear my wonderful hat. And along with my hat, I went into my closet and I found a wonderful purse. I've had this purse for years. I don't believe in throwing good things away that I like. I recycle, reuse. And this is a very fun purse, and it's got the most interesting design. It opens this way, and I think I wore this purse last time at an Easter because look what I found inside. I found a pair of pink gloves. Now, doesn't that, and they have a little pearl on them, very nice gloves. And do you know, I think these gloves were my mother's. These are very vintage. They have a little pearl and then a little pearl on the front. Just total detail. So these are perfect for Easter. I'm not going to put them on right now for the tea talk, but we have the pink purse. Isn't a pink purse just wonderful for that special accent touch for spring? So I thought, I went through my china closet trying to find the most bright pink cups and saucers for you today. And there are so many shades of pink. You really realize that when you look at different china. They all have a different shade of pink. Now, my earrings also are true magenta, and I have some jewels on that are quite magenta and have those sparkles, the pink sparkles. And I think I'll put that purse right there. If it'll stay, we'll see. Okay, we'll see if it stays. And then I am wearing the most special cross. This is probably the most special piece of jewelry I own. I really treasure this. It's Norwegian. It's made in Norway. And it's a cross, hard to see on the tea talk, but on each of the sides is a hanging gold heart and underneath a gold heart. And a lady told me that in Norway, the tradition is after the bride and groom are married and they've gone back to be together alone, the man will give the wife traditionally a beautiful gold cross, and it's called the wedding cross. And this is a wedding cross. And you know, I started looking up on Google to find out the history, but I could not find any cross like this. It's so different. It has a heart here, a heart there, 3 hearts representing the Trinity, and then it has the gold representing the pure deity of Christ, and the cross, the resurrection. So I'm wearing it for you today for Easter. And if you ever see one like this, and can get it, I would get it, because they're really becoming, I guess, quite rare. Another Norwegian tradition that is really beautiful is the bridal crown. And this is passed down generationally, a beautiful gold or silver crown that the bride wears. They have become so expensive that now they often rent them out to the bride if the family doesn't have one. And back in Decorah, at the Norwegian Museum there, the Vesterheim, my daughter went to school at Luther College, and the Vesterheim Museum is the largest ethnic museum in all of America. And it is the Norwegian Museum. Vester means west, Heim means home, so it's the Western home. And it's 4 floors of the most fascinating artifacts of all the Iowa farmers, the Minnesota, Midwest, Scandinavian farmers, and different people that came to America. Well, the Vesterheim Museum has a beautiful bridal crown, silver, that they rent out. And my daughter actually got married in Decorah, in a darling little, 100-year-old little white Episcopal church in the town. But she didn't really want the bridal crown because she had a different idea, and she and her husband, I think, are almost the same height, and it would have been, because they're really quite tall. So we didn't do that, but I love the tradition. And if you see, often the Norwegian brides get married in their Norwegian costumes with the bridal crown. And if it's summer, which often it is, there are even flowers woven through it. Beautiful, beautiful tradition. Well, if you haven't gotten your tea yet, please pause and get your tea, and I'll be waiting here for you. Isn't it wonderful? With YouTube, you can turn me off and turn me on at will, and I'll be right here for you. Well, I thought, this is Easter, and I have to find the most beautiful tea set. I went looking through my house for magenta. And this is another thing. Last year, a friend of mine gave me this wonderful teapot. It's the Girl. And then I found this magenta cup and a little magenta and green pitcher. And I'll show you what else I put on the little tea tray. Is a magenta shoe I had with gold on it, and I put a few flowers in it. You see? Let me fix them, and you can see what they look like. See the little magenta shoe, that's it. I think it's fun on the tea, if you want to do a color theme, go through your house and find put them together. Now, this pot, it might be my most special pot of all. You know, isn't it beautiful? It's the Girl, and she's got that magenta. They use that on everything. I just think it's so wonderful that this year is the magenta color. And here is my teacup, and it's got the romantic scene of the man and the lady. It's Italian. It looks like the Romantic poets. I'm going to pour out. Ooh, my tea is nice and hot. And I'm going to put a little splash of milk. The tea I'm using today is exotic. It's fabulous. It's one of those Hornby and Sons from England, and they make the best tea. It is absolutely fabulous. Oh my. Now, for my little tea friends, whoops, here is the darlingest. Now to me, this is a spring cup. Isn't that precious? It's gold inside, and it's made to look like a flower. Comes up with green leaves and pink flower. Isn't it adorable? It's very tiny. I mean, it's probably 3 ounce. And then I have brought this one for the littlest people on the Tea Talk. Let me turn it this way where the gold is. That's another little baby. They look bigger on the Tea Talk, but maybe you can see this is the size difference. This is a normal cup. This is really a little Demitasse. That if you ever make the real Demitasse coffee, the strong espresso, it's traditional to serve that in Europe after the dinner with little Demitasse cups, just a little cup. Oh my, that is delicious. I think I'll move this here so I can keep my tea by me. Isn't the girl beautiful though? It reminds me, some of you remember, there used to be a fun thing. When I was a little girl, often they would make a cake and put a doll in the middle, and then she was all frosted, her skirt, beautiful skirt with very involved decoration. And then the little girl, whoever the birthday was for, got to keep the doll. And it was so beautiful. And this just kind of reminds me of that. I think it's so detailed. Whoever thought of this, really, the creativity is so grand. I think tea is probably one of the most creative, the China. Oh, and I have this pin. This was a pin from dear Heather. And she's a friend that comes to tea, and she brought me this pin. It is the dogwood, and I wore that for Easter on there to hold this. The scarf is over a flowered top, but so I have a lot of floral. It just felt right for Easter this year. Today is kind of gray, but I'm hoping for sunshine for Easter Day. Would be quite nice, wouldn't it? Well, now for the treat. Okay, I thought a lot of people don't want to eat anything too fancy today because they're going to save their calories for Easter, right? So I put a few little ginger biscuits on a silver tray. There they are. They're just very plain, very simple. And I chose this plate, is my favorite plate. I have had this on the Tea Talk before, but I thought with magenta today, this plate was in my mother's china closet my whole life, and I don't know where it came from, but I love this rich pink, and it's got the black silhouette of the people, like a George Washington Martha. He's bowing to her, kind of like a minuet. And I just love the pink and black, which is quite French. The French use that a lot. Well, for you who really deserve all of my tea people, you are so special to me. Guess what I found today? I had another bunny. There were 2 bunnies brought to us, and one didn't get eaten yet, and it's got pink sprinkles. So I am going to show it to you like this. See? These are the cookies that came from the Special Bakery in Lakewood. You know, baking cookies and decorating cakes, I take my hat off in great respect to all who do it, because it is not an easy task. And it's a lot of cleanup, a lot of detail, and a lot of work. And I just put this beautiful cross today on the tea table for Easter in honor of our Lord. You can put whatever you want on the tea table. That's what makes it so fun. It's just, you can be as absolutely creative as you desire. Now, I'm playing very softly today, St. Matthew's Passion, and I just can't get over how beautiful it is. And I made a mistake. Last week, I was saying the lecture of the musician online on the St. Matthew's Passion. It's Leonard Bernstein. That is the conductor I meant to say. And it's so amazing how right after my tea talk, I'll think something wasn't right, and then click, there it comes. Because I said a different gentleman who was actually from the German musical world. But it's Leonard Bernstein, the great New York conductor, gives a fabulous lecture on the St. Matthew's Passion. And you can get it online, and you will learn so much. And he talks about the brilliance of Bach and how he truly, with the music, tells the story. When Jesus is walking up to Calvary carrying the cross, it goes up the scale. And he said, no one has ever done this in music the way Bach has. And who do we have right here? Johann Sebastian Bach. And that's a fabulous bust that a friend gave me, that she and her husband had traveled all around Europe, and they worked for the, they were not military. He was a piano instructor. She worked for the American government, and they traveled extensively. And that bust came from a very small village in Italy that is famous for their sculptors. And so it is authentic. And I really, really am grateful and treasure it. And my gold bust here is Beethoven. So I have the two great B's, Bach and Beethoven. And then up in the corner, you can't see, I have Mozart, and then I have Schubert. Trying not to leave anyone out. I think I have a Chopin. But they're all great. They're all wonderful. And I like to have these because I feel when young people come in my home, they are getting to know the great classical musicians that have given us so much. And this music they have written, almost all of it is based on biblical themes. It is the core, well, I would say it's the fruit of Western civilization, because you could never have something as great as a Johann Sebastian Bach without generations before. He, as far back as you see, there are musicians in his family. And then he came up to the very perfect timing to be composing and writing. He's in the 1700s. We've discussed this before. And Thomas Jefferson, with his brilliance, recognized the brilliance in Bach. He met Mozart and he liked Mozart, but he said Bach is the great one. Bach takes you to a completely another level. And every piece of music that Bach wrote said, Solo Deo Gratia, to the glory of God alone. He was a true biblical Christian. In his museum, there is a Bible that he used. And it, in the Chronicles, where Solomon is anointed king, it is so underlined you can hardly read the print. He was studying the history of biblical worship. I have actually been teaching a class on that. I have an undergraduate class of a group of Kenyans at a seminary, and one of the classes I teach is the history of worship through the Psalms and then to today. And I have learned so much as I've taught. My daughter, Victoria, had a violin teacher. He was a great teacher, Dr. Bellum. He was a graduate of Juilliard, and he was very elderly. When she had him, he could not demonstrate. In other words, his hands were too shaky to play, but he could instruct, and he was tremendous, and he gave her great depth and help in so many areas of her violin. But I remember something Dr. Bellum said. He said, if you really, really want to learn your violin, you must teach it to others. And it is so true. As I've taught this class, I have learned so much. I feel like I have a completely new understanding of worship and the history. And I am working on a visual to have pictures on the screen while I talk about the history. And I'm starting with Adam in the garden. He's the first worshiper because he has the true worship to God. He walks with God. He talks with God. So he doesn't just tell God he loves him. He lets God tell him. This communication. And you know, that's what I've discovered worship is. It's not just us going to church and telling God we love him. That's good. And the liturgy helps you do that. But it is pausing and letting God, his Spirit, speak back to us. Love, kindness, assurance, goodness. It's a two-way street. Well, as I am doing this section, it started small, but you know how these creative projects go. It's big now. It's gotten so big. I went on to Cain and Abel. That is the first altar. And that was, you know, the worship, and that was the problem. One of the worships was right and one wasn't. And Cain slew his brother Abel because he didn't like the fact that God liked Abel's worship. Because it wasn't a worship of works. It was a worship of grace. Grace. That's what the message of Easter is and the Bible is. No other religion in the world has a God that comes to this earth and becomes like us and shows us the way and then gives us a gift and then pays for our sins, and the Holy Lamb dies for us, and then all we have to do is receive it. It takes your breath away. It's so fabulous. That is why there's so many songs. You pick up a church hymn book, there's about 700 hymns in the average hymn book. Nobody told these people to write a song. They wrote a song out of their gratefulness and they got the understanding, the revelation of who they were and who they are and what he's done. It's fabulous. And as I continued through my worship lessons that I'm giving in picture, my son-in-law is finding the pictures and he's doing the whole visual screen that will be eventually shown, and I am just choosing the people. But as we went through the Old Testament, you think every time something happens, they build an altar. You know, you have Abraham, he builds an altar. Moses in Sinai, the whole thing is building the tabernacle and having an altar and worship. And why do they trek to Canaan? They work so hard to get there yes, they want to have a home that's safe, but they want to build a temple so they can worship. Isn't that beautiful? And if you fast forward, there's so much more. You have the Psalms of David, and you have all of the various people worshiping, but you go into the New Testament and there's worship. And then Revelation, of course, is the future picture of heaven. And what is it? Worship. It's all worship. But in between that, when you go through church history in the Middle Ages, what is the tallest building in every village and every town? The cathedral. And the cross is at the top. And it's saying Jesus Christ over the town. He's the highest. That cathedral was much more than just a building to worship. The very design of the cathedral was worship. It was looking up. It was taking your eyes up, and it was going up, and it was the altar faces east, faces Jerusalem, where when Christ comes again, he will come. And there's much more. I could do a whole tea talk on cathedrals. They're fascinating, and they are complete works of art. They took at least 3 generations to build. And when people have been in the cathedrals behind the bricks, they found little messages written, love messages to God, secret messages the builders wrote, because they considered that was their gift to God. Their worship was building that cathedral. Isn't that beautiful? And no one knows exactly how the stained glass windows were put together. In fact, Tiffany, went traveling all over Europe, and he fell in love with the cathedral stained glass windows. And he said, how do you make the glass like that? How do you make the colors? Come to find out, the recipe or the chemical compounds, what was put together to make those colors, was lost in history. Just like the pyramids. No one knows how they were built. They really don't. Well, no one knows how the stained glass windows were really formated. So he went back to New York and he said, I'm going to experiment with glass, and I am going to make beautiful stained glass. And that is what all the beautiful Tiffany stained glass lamps, and here's one right here behind me, and it's of course a reproduction, but in our Capitol, which was completed in 1929, right before the Great Depression, there are, I believe, 36 or 40, maybe more, pieces that Tiffany did for our Capitol. They're the last great works that the Tiffany himself did. And one of them in our Capitol, beautiful, is the chandelier. And it's so big that you can put a Volkswagen inside it. It's that phenomenal. So if you live near Washington State, you really need to come and visit this Capitol and have a guided tour so you know what you're seeing, because the Tiffany glass is all over in different positions and formats in the Capitol. So that inspiration came from the cathedral, and the reason they had the stained glass was to tell a story to the people who were at that time in the Middle Ages. The majority of the people were illiterate. And for the little children, it means they couldn't read or write. And so that was like watching a screen or a TV. It would be the story, Jesus's birth, and then the next window would be Jesus in the temple at 12. The next window, he'd be teaching his disciples. Next window, death on the cross. So it was the whole story. Isn't that interesting? And then, of course, there are many other things that are put in the stained glass cathedrals. There were then great saints in church history, great kings. Charlemagne is in many cathedrals, and I know that in a cathedral, small cathedral in Austria, I saw at the altar, well, these were like actually statues that were created out of stone and glass, and they were Saint Benedict and Saint Augustine, and then it was Bernard of Clairvaux, and one more, and it was, they had the great people that were, and I think Bernard of Clairvaux was responsible actually for almost every cathedral I went in Austria. He had been instrumental in inspiring the monastery, and then out of the monastery they would build the cathedral, and then out of the cathedral, well, usually there would be a king's palace and then nearby, and then the little town would surround it. That's Middle Ages, you know, that's how the little villages and towns came. And when you look at a piece of china and there's a scene of a village or a town, you'll always see the cathedral. It's the tallest. That's our heritage. We're so rich. We have so much. We have all the people that have gone before us. And I have to tell you, last week at my seminary, the president of our seminary just wrote a fabulous book on leadership, and he had a book launch, and they invited the ambassador from Kenya to America to come. And I got to meet him, and he's a wonderful man, wonderful Christian gentleman. And these Kenyans are so amazing. They're all writing books and publishing, and they started this seminary I'm a part of, and it's going to go to South America now, and they're excited, they're happy, and I'm just happy to be a part with them, a small part, to get to know them. God has a big family in the world, from India to China, to Asia, to Japan, to all of Africa, to Europe, to Great Britain, to the Middle East, Iran, so many beautiful Christians, Turkey, Bulgaria, Russia, the Baltic lands, South America, and all the islands of the sea. God has a family. There it is, the islands of the sea. It's a poem, God has a family. I've been writing poems lately. Well, happy, blessed Easter all around the world. And now this little tea talk is going to Kenya. And I've sent it out to my Kenyan people. And I love them. And they are so wonderful. They know how to drink tea, probably better than anyone. The Kenyan tea is world famous. So during Eastertide, please pour a cup of tea for someone else. And if you want to give a little gift, I tell you, a cup and saucer is a nice gift with a flower in it. Yes. And I love that playing now. O sacred head thou wounded. That is attributed to Bernard of Clairvaux. He wrote that prayer. And Bach took the words and put it into music. O sacred head thou wounded. If you haven't been to church for a while, go on Sunday. It's Easter. Take your children, take your friends, take your family, take your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters. You will be so happy. We are privileged. We can go to church. We are free. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe. Please push the notification bell. And if you like it, push the like button and the share button. Yes, there's 4 buttons to push. And then the rest will be history. And I would love to have you be a subscribed member, because I think that sometimes people are missing this tea talk because I can't send it out to everyone. It's too many people. So please subscribe. It's free. There's no issue in subscription. I've subscribed to many people's channels and it just works really great. So there it is again. Bach brings it back again. Oh, and listen to the St. Matthew's Passion. And you can get it online where you see the words, because then it means so much. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you next time